Under the surface of every revolution lies a fracture no one dared to acknowledge until it tore the world apart. And right now, that fracture has a name. It's not a nation. It's not a party. It's not even a company. It's a man. Elon Musk. A name once whispered in boardrooms and worshipped in White House briefings, now spoken with uncertainty, suspicion, and fear. The man who once held America's future in his hands just slammed the door on Washington and walked into a room full of rivals. And he didn't just leave the table. He took the blueprints, the satellites, the AI, and the next generation of infrastructure with him. But here's the real question. If Musk doesn't answer to the U.S. government anymore, then who does he answer to? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear isn't just a business story. It's the unraveling of control, the rebirth of a technocratic empire, and the geopolitical custody battle for the future of innovation. Don't forget to subscribe and like, because the truth you're about to hear might not stay online for long. June 5th, 2025. A date that should have been another tech earnings day. Instead, it turned into a declaration of war. Economic, ideological, and maybe something deeper. Elon Musk, once hailed as America's crown jewel of entrepreneurship, publicly accused President Donald Trump of betrayal. Not disagreement, not policy misalignment. Betrayal. In a tweet that instantly wiped another $40 billion off Tesla's valuation, Musk threatened to terminate every federal contract tied to his empire, from Starlink military support to Tesla's once-cherished EV subsidies. On its own, this might sound like a tantrum, but this wasn't sudden. It was surgical. Months in the making, and quietly devastating. Weeks before this declaration, Tesla had already begun withdrawing from every federally funded EV corridor in the U.S., while SpaceX halted cooperation with the Pentagon. There were no press conferences, no transparency, just a quiet, methodical decoupling. Starlink, which underpinned military satellite reviews, abandoned compliance protocols entirely. It was a blackout. One defense source put it bluntly, "We didn't lose Elon, we priced him out. But if he's out, where is he going?" The answer might terrify Washington more than the silence that preceded it. Brazil, South Africa, India, BRICS. Countries that have long chafed under the thumb of U.S. trade policy are now welcoming the world's most influential technologist with open arms, and not for experimentation, for infrastructure. In June, India confirmed pilot Starlink coverage across 5 states, with full deployment coming in Q4. Brazil signed a $2.3 billion EV infrastructure package that includes national charging networks, no U.S. regulation, no visibility, and buried within government filings, evidence that Tesla rerouted critical supply chains through Malaysia and South Africa, bypassing U.S. compliance choke points. All of it points to one conclusion. This wasn't a protest. This was an exit strategy. And it worked. But if you think this is just about hardware, think again. Because while cameras were pointed at rockets, something far more dangerous was embedding itself deep in Beijing's energy core. In May 2025, Chinese regulators quietly approved Tesla's autopilot-derived AI, Autobidder, for use in energy grid balancing systems in Guangdong. A US-built algorithm now manages load balancing in China's industrial zones. No logo, no press, just back-end code humming through state infrastructure. It's not even labeled Tesla, but it is. And unlike Nvidia or Google, who got boxed out by export rules, Musk slipped in by registering the software as non-vehicle energy tech. Legal, maybe. Strategic, absolutely. And a Treasury investigation is already underway, but the damage is done. The U.S. didn't just lose a system, it lost oversight. And China now runs American code. At scale. At the same time, the Pentagon attempted to assert override access to Starlink, only to be stonewalled. The result? Immediate removal of SpaceX from over $4 billion in defense procurement lists. The contracts went instead to Boeing, Lockheed, Raytheon. But behind the curtain, something more troubling happened. Intelligence analysts discovered that leaked Russian procurement docs referenced non-state LEO communications. Translation: they're leaving the door open for Starlink. The same Starlink the US no longer controls. And in this new world order, allegiance isn't declared. It's programmed pause. Think about that. Musk's satellites, once designed to serve American soldiers, are now orbiting based on contracts signed in India and Brazil. His AI, once the darling of Silicon Valley, is now managing grids in China. And his voice, once influential in the White House, is now absent from every major U.S. advisory body. In fact, by mid-2025, Musk's companies had been quietly purged. Tesla removed from the Federal EV Infrastructure Forum, xAI booted from the National AI Strategy Group, replaced by Microsoft, Amazon, Anthropic. Meanwhile, Musk's response: if DC wants control, it can build its own infrastructure. We'll build where we're needed. So ask yourself, is this a man lashing out, or a man laying the foundation for a new digital sovereignty? If you're still watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, because we're only halfway through. Let's talk consequences. The U.S. Treasury Department launched a compliance probe into Musk's exported software. They want to know if Autopilot and Autobidder now qualify as dual-use technology, civilian and military. If so, Musk might have violated the 2025 export controls. But here's the twist. Musk's legal team insists these platforms are commercially non-sensitive. The real battle? It's not legal. It's philosophical. Can a U.S. company, or rather a U.S.-born CEO, build infrastructure so integrated into global systems that even Washington can't shut it down? That's not a trade dispute. That's a sovereignty crisis. And it's playing out in slow motion, with satellites as pawns and algorithms as diplomats. But not everyone is staying quiet. Germany, Japan, and Australia, America's closest allies, have begun reviewing their Starlink dependencies. Why? Because during the Gaza and Crimea operations, Musk unilaterally disabled coverage, no government directive, no international coordination, just one man flipping the switch. That's when NATO advisors started calling Starlink a strategic asset without a chain of command. Which begs the next question. Can any government trust a system whose power source is loyalty to no one? Meanwhile, China is doing the opposite. Not only did it approve Tesla's AI in its grid, it granted gigafactory expansion, land rights for new battery labs, and data exemptions that even domestic giants like BYD can't get. And perhaps most stunning of all, Tesla is now co-leading a public-private EV lab in Hefei with government subsidies. While U.S. firms flee Chinese scrutiny, Musk doubles down, and Beijing doesn't seem to mind. Why? Because, as one Asia-Pacific advisor said, Beijing doesn't need to own Musk. It just needs to let him move. And move he has. By June 2025, Tesla's U.S. exposure dropped by 38%. Starlink's new deployments were 60% non-U.S. xAI began training LMs in UAE facilities. And SpaceX's launch manifest, 40% international. Musk isn't just decoupling. He's architecting a stateless innovation empire. The infrastructure is transnational, the loyalty, optional, the oversight, non-existent, and the impact, unprecedented. Washington is scrambling, allies are hesitating, and rivals are accelerating. But the core question lingers like a silent siren in the distance. If Elon Musk has truly gone independent, unplugged from national allegiance, what happens when the next war breaks out? When the next global crisis needs bandwidth, surveillance, or energy AI? Who decides what gets turned on and what gets shut down? The US, BRICS, or a man who believes borders are just bad interface design? We are entering an age where the most powerful infrastructure on Earth isn't run by governments, it's run by billionaires. But Elon Musk isn't just any billionaire. He's the one building the new rails for energy, space, communication, and AI, all without a flag. In a world where digital systems are more important than air bases, where Starlink might mean the difference between life and death in a blackout, who controls the sky, and who controls the code? There's a name for this. Some call it innovation, some call it insurrection. But in Washington, it's starting to sound a lot like succession. Not from a country, but from its control. And while politicians argue over tariffs and subpoenas, Elon Musk is wiring India, embedding AI in China, and putting satellites over the southern hemisphere. None of it governed by Washington, all of it beyond reach. So, the next time you hear a press conference about securing the future, ask yourself, what future? Because the man who built the tools to define it has already walked away from the table. And maybe, just maybe, he took the future with him. Remember to subscribe and like, because the silence from DC might be the loudest signal yet that they no longer hold the microphone. The question is, who does? And just when it seemed the world had caught its breath, the silence gave way to something else, an echo that began not in Washington, not even in Silicon Valley, but in places where power is often built in the shadows, in the boardrooms of New Delhi, the data centers of São Paulo, and the command networks quietly mapping the skies over Africa and Southeast Asia. Because the story doesn't end with Musk walking away, it accelerates, it multiplies. The man who once built rockets is now launching an entirely new class of geopolitical behavior, one that ignores embassies and rewrites the idea of statecraft itself. The headline said Musk exited the U.S. system. But what if the truth is more unnerving? What if Musk didn't exit? What if he's replacing it? As of July 2025, multiple leaked documents have pointed to an accelerating phenomenon. Foreign governments quietly embedding Musk's infrastructure into their sovereign security and communications networks, bypassing traditional treaties. In India, senior telecom officials are allegedly drafting long-term integration protocols for Starlink as a core element of the national emergency grid. That's not a pilot project. That's strategic infrastructure. In Brazil, government insiders hint at a second Tesla deal, one that includes AI-powered traffic automation and EV policing systems linked directly to regional surveillance hubs. And in South Africa, reports indicate that Starlink nodes are being tested alongside military communication terminals under a program the Defense Ministry refuses to name. Coincidence? Hardly. This is chess. And Musk isn't playing one board. He's building his own game entirely. And yet, the United States continues to act as if this is a negotiation, that if they sanction hard enough, threaten firmly enough, or build slowly enough, they'll win him back. But what if he's not coming back? What if, right now, we are watching the first ever self-styled sovereign technologist in history, not accountable to any one flag, not loyal to any institution, not restrained by any alliance? Ask yourself, what happens when the one man with the keys to the satellites, the algorithms, the sensors, the batteries, the rockets, and the global machine learning platforms is no longer a citizen of any system, but the architect of one? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story isn't over. It's only getting darker. You think it ends with Starlink and a few satellites? Think again. XAI has reportedly completed 2 full-scale model trainings entirely outside U.S. jurisdiction, in Abu Dhabi and in a covert facility in Nairobi. Sources say these models are being designed not just to generate text, but to manage real-time financial modeling and national-level risk prediction. That's the kind of tool once reserved for intelligence agencies. But now it's in private hands, and unlike OpenAI or Google, whose operations remain tethered to U.S. law and compliance, XAI now operates in a liminal space, too big to regulate, too distributed to control. So again we ask, who audits this power, and who benefits from its spread? Because while Washington wrings its hands over lost leverage, Beijing is drafting its next chapter. Sources close to the Chinese state grid confirm that Tesla's AI is already being evaluated for deployment in Hebei and Hunan, regions critical to China's energy corridor. Not only that, but internal memos hint at the possibility of extending AI optimization to high-speed rail. Imagine that. The same code, once written for Tesla's vehicles, now helping to regulate China's transportation backbone. And if China accepts it, it means one of the world's most closed authoritarian systems just outsourced infrastructure logic to a man the US no longer controls. Let that sink in. What happens if the next generation of Chinese power, flow, urban logistics, or digital surveillance relies on Tesla's back-end code? What happens if those systems become so deeply entwined with Musk's tech that China itself can't unravel them without losing stability? That's not just dependence. That's digital entanglement. And it's already too late to undo. Meanwhile, European analysts are sounding the alarm. The European Space Agency has convened emergency sessions to determine whether Starlink compliance is even feasible under the EU's revised defense coordination standards. Germany's Bundesnetzagentur issued a closed-door report questioning what it calls the escalating opacity of Starlink's command logic, meaning no one outside Musk's own inner circle knows exactly how the system can be overridden, if at all. France, meanwhile, is delaying broadband rollout plans in rural areas where Starlink was previously listed as a partner. The reason? Concerns over wartime resilience and non-aligned autonomous behavior. In plain terms, they're worried the satellites might stop responding, or worse, respond to someone else entirely, and yet no one is unplugging it. Why? Because despite all the alarm bells, no existing system can match Starlink's latency, its resilience, or its scale. And that's the genius of the trap. You can't remove it, because it's too good. The more nations rely on it, the less control they have. And the more they need Musk to keep it running, the more they realize they never really had control to begin with. Let's return to Washington. Treasury agents are still investigating, congressional panels are still meeting. But behind closed doors, the real fear isn't what Musk has done. It's what others will try to copy. Because now that a precedent exists, what's to stop other billionaires from building sovereign infrastructure of their own? What happens when AI companies decide to train offshore? When drone firms reroute patents through tax havens? When data centers quietly shift their jurisdictions to free zones in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, or Africa? Musk might be the first to walk away, but he won't be the last. And that's the part that terrifies policymakers the most. Here is a slightly shortened and tightened version of that section, keeping the tone, meaning, and impact intact while trimming some redundancies and streamlining the flow. It's no longer a question of whether Musk has too much power. That moment has passed. The real question now is what happens when power no longer flows through governments, but through systems no one voted for, no one can audit, and no one can shut down. Systems engineered by one man, deployed across continents, and answerable to no one. If Musk were to shut down Starlink access over a U.S. military zone tomorrow, what leverage would Washington have? If Tesla's AI grid software fails in Beijing, who is held responsible? If XAI flags a market collapse and sends the data to foreign banks first, what law applies? There are no treaties for this, no playbook, no protocol, and yet this is where we are. So, what is this, if not business? Is it ideology, a bid for autonomy, a grudge, or is it something far bigger? The quiet rise of a post-sovereign framework where the borders that mattered for centuries are now bypassed by code. Some believe Musk is building a digital nation, one with no land, no borders, no elections, just networks, satellites, and users. Others believe we're witnessing the rise of corporate feudalism, where power is no longer earned by votes, but granted through platform access. Whatever the truth is, the world is not watching a CEO. It's witnessing the rise of a system, an operating system for influence, a machine that cannot be unplugged. And if you're not asking who holds the key, maybe you're already a part of it. Drop a comment below, like, subscribe. Because what we're dealing with now isn't just a tech revolution. It's a quiet, planetary realignment. There is always a strange stillness that follows the collapse of old systems, not the peace of resolution, but the confusion of transition. We are living inside that stillness. While institutions scramble to understand a man who no longer moves within their orbit, and while maps of power become outdated faster than they can be redrawn, something deeper is taking shape. Elon Musk isn't just outside the system. He's replacing it, and too many people still don't see it. Or worse, see it and remain silent. But it's already here, embedded in data centers beneath deserts, flying above us in autonomous orbit, calculating scenarios in software no government can regulate, shaping economic conditions before the headlines even catch up. In August 2025, emerging reports indicated that one of xAI's foreign-trained models may have triggered shifts in sovereign bond markets, based not on state forecasting, but on proprietary simulations. If true, that means the future of economies could be increasingly dictated not by ministers, but by neural networks hosted in jurisdictions chosen for legal ambiguity. When models that powerful move faster than oversight, faster than the law, even faster than the public's ability to know, they stop reflecting the world and start creating it. And the sky? The sky no longer belongs to governments. Starlink's orbital mesh now covers most of the planet, with no hard kill switch, no override access, and no formal accountability. Whistleblowers describe next-gen capabilities embedded in the Starshield layer, real-time imaging, spectrum control, potentially even autonomous satellite behavior. Is it militarized? Musk says no. But if it were, would anyone know before it's too late? This isn't about optics. This is about reality. The man who builds the batteries that power the cities, who runs the AI behind global mobility, who owns the infrastructure behind the last-mile internet across continents, now answers to no agency, no nation, no alliance. He can redirect satellites, reroute power, accelerate or slow the flow of digital intelligence. And while policy analysts draft memos, the system already functions. You can't regulate what you can't reach. Some nations are trying. Sanctions, compliance boards, trade leverage. But Musk has outpaced the tools of control. Tesla's IP is increasingly filed through offshore shells. Starlink's jurisdiction is fragmented. xAI's models are trained in countries where intellectual property laws are vague and enforcement impossible. You cannot nationalize something that lives nowhere. And as SpaceX distances itself from U.S. defense projects, the traditional feedback loop between private innovation and military readiness begins to break. What happens when the Pentagon no longer has access to satellite relays they once helped fund? When DARPA projects become incompatible with the infrastructure Musk now builds for BRICS states? When battlefield advantage depends not on air superiority, but access to systems operated by someone who refuses to choose a side? The real fear in Washington isn't that Musk left, it's that others will follow, other companies, other founders, other systems. What happens when energy storage firms begin registering in countries without emissions regulation? When AI companies stop seeking U.S. certifications? When everything from cloud storage to predictive analytics moves offshore? Not for tax reasons, but for strategic detachment. By September, reports suggested Tesla was moving to license out core battery chemistry to third-party developers in countries with no IP-sharing treaties. That's not optimization, that's disengagement, that's a warning shot. The core of Musk's empire is drifting into an untouchable zone, one that cannot be regulated, cannot be compelled, and cannot be reclaimed once it's gone. And the people, the users, they don't vote on any of this, but they rely on it more with each passing day. Their cars, their satellites, their AI tools, their homes. Slowly, imperceptibly, they've become dependent on a system that no one asked them to join, but one that now wraps around them like infrastructure. So ask yourself, are you still a citizen, or are you a client? When elections happen in countries that use AI models trained in unknown jurisdictions, when communication depends on bandwidth that flows through Musk's nodes, when the next blackout is restored not by a state grid, but by a company's platform, what's really left of sovereignty? Some will say this was inevitable, that the state model was always going to yield to something leaner, faster, smarter. But inevitability doesn't make it safe, and efficiency doesn't make it fair. This isn't a government. It's not even a corporation in the traditional sense. It's a distributed empire of code, hardware, and leverage moving faster than language, law, or legacy can respond. And so we're left with one final question. What if it's already done? What if Musk didn't seize power? What if the world gave it to him? Through convenience, through innovation, through reliance, through silence. Comment below if you think it can still be reversed. Subscribe and like if you think it's already too late. Because if history remembers this era as the moment power shifted forever, don't say no one saw it coming. Like, subscribe, comment below. Because maybe the most dangerous part of this story isn't that it's happening, it's that you're reading about it too late.